For your information, for those who did not join us before, Southeast Asia Talk, or C-Talk, is a monthly discussion initiated and organized by our research center. This time we have our book discussion series number 4. And I'm happy to announce that we organized our today's book discussion in cooperation with the University of Freiburg, Germany. From the screen, I see some colleges from Germany, from Hungary, from Hebrew, from Denmark. So guten Tag, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As well, there are many colleges from Southeast Asia, from Universitas Indonesia, University of Malaya, University Malaysia, from the Digital Society Group, from Eastern Indonesia also. Good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. This is really fabulous. And I know this is approaching the break of fasting, but I hope this is all right. So thank you for joining us this time. Dear everyone, as you may see from our invitation and also poster, we have fabulous opportunity to learn today from 2 fabulous experts, Prof. Judith Schele, who will share about an anthropological perspective on social science in Southeast Asia. And the second is Prof. Azirah Binti Hashim from University of Malaya, Malaysia, acting as the discussant today. I myself, Ita Yulianto from CESASS, acting as your moderator. All right, so moving forward, please welcome Prof. Hermin Indah Wahyuni, the director of CESASS, to open our discussion today. Prof. Hermin, the time and screen is yours.
Thank you, Ita. Actually, we already have a small talk, yeah, but it's very happy for me to have all of you in this C-Talk number 40 or the book discussion series number 4. So, guten Morgen, good afternoon, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's really nice that finally we can have this discussion series after very long journey for this publication of this book. And I have to say sorry to Prof. Judith Schele because we need more than 2 years, I think, to finalize this book, but really happy that CESASS publication can finally publish this book. And we hope that, really hope that this book can precipitate discussion in the social science fora, because now I think the social sciences attract more attentions related with the so many dynamic in the society. So this afternoon, I think we have time to discuss. There are so many sociologists join us here. So many professors also from Indonesia join in this session. So very nice, Mbak Ita, thank you very much. And also for CESASS team to prepare everything. And finally, we have our dear colleagues together to discuss in this afternoon. And yeah, I hope that we have a very fruitful discussion for this afternoon. Thank you very much. Also for all support from colleagues to CESASS, that this year we still, as the Center of Excellence in Social Science, supported by Higher Education, Indonesian Ministry Higher Education. Thank you very much. Mbak Ita, please go on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, please, Mbak Ita.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof. Hermin, for the opening. Let me now introduce our 2 speakers. I will invite Prof. Judith Schele. Selamat pagi, Bu Judith. Thank you again for being with us today. Dear everyone, Prof. Judith atau Prof. Schele, Bu Judith, is a professor of sociocultural anthropology at the University of Freiburg, Germany, but her second home is Indonesia. Am I right, Bu Judith?
Betul ya.
I must be right in this case. She has conducted extensive fieldwork in Indonesia over the last 3 decades and published widely on religious dynamics, cultural politics, globalization, and transcultural issues, gender, the anthropology of disaster, and she is well known for her fieldwork school model named Reciprocal Collaboration in International Teams. Thank you, Judith, for joining us. And the second, I will introduce Prof. Azirah Binti Hashim. Good morning as well. You are in Freiburg. Good morning. Professor Azirah is a professor in the English Language Department, Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, University of Malaya, Malaysia. And she currently the Executive Director of Asia Europe Institute, or AEI, University of Malaya. Prior to this, she was the Director of the Center for ASEAN Regionalism and also the Dean of the Humanities Research Cluster. Her recent and current roles include coordinator of the Asia-Africa Development University Network, and she also the coordinator of Asia Pacific Higher Education Research Partnership Network and chairperson of the Research Ethics community at her university. Her research interests include language contact in the region, English as lingua franca in ASEAN, language and law, and higher education in ASEAN, and academic and professional discourse. Okay, without further ado.
May I say something? I forget to welcome Prof. Azirah also with us. Prof. Azirah is nice coincidentally because Prof. Azirah is my friend it was 2012 when both of us joined a program from the AAD that like international discourse, and it's very nice that we have you also and we meet in this Zoom, Prof. Azirah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Azirah. Okay, we will move forward and let us start our book discussion. I give the floor to Professor Judith Schele, who will share the 3rd chapter of this book entitled Social Sciences in Southeast Asia, an Anthropological Perspective. Prof. Schele, 30 minutes ahead is yours.
Thank you so much. Matur nuwun, terima kasih. And Azirah is in Bern now. Danke. the Swiss pronunciation I'm not familiar with. Anyway, warm welcome to all of you, and it's great to see many friends and colleagues and some students, and yeah, I would really be happy to have this discussion in physical presence somewhere, but at the same time we are all aware that probably it would not be possible to meet so many people and to bring all of you, all of us together at one place in the middle of the summer term. So this digital format also proves that there are some advantages and that we learned new ways to collaborate and to exchange and to discuss. I will come back to that aspect later in my short talk. Yeah, first of all, also from my side, many thanks to Bu Hermin and Bu Ita for not only organizing this event today, but first of all, organizing the conference in 2018, and then struggling and working very hard on the book publication. I know that probably I was a bit pushing you back then. And I'm very aware how much work it is and how much effort you put in that. And it's great that you could present, or that you can present it now, and hopefully it will stimulate further discussions on the present situation, but hopefully also the future of social sciences in Southeast Asia and in a globally entangled world, because this is basically what I try to focus on. So before I continue, I will share the screen. Wait a moment. Yeah, is it already? Can you see it? Yeah, thank you. So the chapter I'm talking about is social sciences in Southeast Asia from an anthropological perspective. And as everybody sees immediately, this is very ambitious because social sciences is a very broad field. Many disciplines are included. And Southeast Asia, again, is an extremely diverse area culturally, politically, economically, and ethnically. So it's impossible to talk about the social sciences all over Southeast Asia within in one chapter or in one short presentation. So I hope you can understand that although I try to contextualize and embed my talk in the broader Southeast Asian context, but my focus is on Indonesia because as Ita already was so kind to mention, this is my, you said, second home, and in a way I agree, at least not only for professional reasons, but also from my heart and for personal reasons. It's the area where I have been doing research, or I visited Indonesia for the first time in '81, and I started to do research around '87. And I already back then, I started to collaborate with Gajah Mada University. So there is a long history of collaboration, a personal history, a professional history. And what I'm going to say is more or less based on these experiences. And that brings me to the Freiburg side, the German side. Here I'm the head of Department of Social-Cultural Anthropology at the University of Freiburg. And as my colleagues Jürgen Rüland and Günter Schulze, but also many other participants who join us today that are closely affiliated and join us in many events and contribute to our Freiburg-based Southeast Asian study group. Our motto, our principle for many years has been grounding area studies in social practice. And this is something that I think is also what we wish to do in the future, to ground our, not only our empirical, but also our theory building efforts in the in the encounters, we in anthropology call it fieldwork on the ground. And that brings me to the second part of the title. It's an anthropological perspective, and anthropologists are always curious to learn about self and other. And as you know from the legacy, the partly also problematic past of our disciplines, the tradition was that anthropologists from the global north conducted research in the global south, in our case in Indonesia. Whereas now, and I think today's meeting is proof for that, we do everything to open that up and to find new ways and new anthropological perspectives that also include the anthropology of knowledge production. Academic cultures are an important part of what we are investigating, exploring, and in a very inclusive manner, because we try to find out not only how others are doing it, but how we ourselves are doing it, and first of all, how we can do it together, what we can learn from each other, and how we can exchange our perspectives and our experiences. So this is very briefly the background, and now, yeah, the questions that I'm focusing on are what can anthropology offer for a better understanding of the contemporary social sciences in Southeast Asia, and which new models, innovative models of practicing social sciences are emerging, and what changed since we had this conference at Gajah Mada University at CESASS in 2018. And back then I was writing this paper, and of course for the publication I could revise it a bit, but basically it is a paper of the pre-pandemic time and period, and we will also discuss today what changed, what new challenges and what new opportunities we have. I will very, very briefly talk on the historical background, then on contemporary ways of social science making in Southeast Asia, and then I will introduce our prototype or our model of our methodological intervention, the model for transregional collaboration and reciprocity. I will also talk briefly about the digitalization that we experiment with now, new challenges and chances, and say a few concluding words then. It's a bit of a shame that I guess none of the participants could read the chapter and the book so far. And so I have the task to summarize it a little bit. But as the main intention of this meeting is a discussion and an exchange of experiences and an exchange of perspectives, I will not talk too long about the things that I have written in that chapter, and I hope that you will get access to the book and read it in more detail later, or perhaps Bu Hermin and Bu Ita will allow us to send PDF files around for two people who have special interest in it, but this is the editor's decision, not mine. Okay, so talking about the historical background, I do not want to go far back into the past. I just want to talk about the recent history, and that has been shaped mainly by the neoliberalization of universities all over Southeast Asia. I would even dare to say all over the world, because these neoliberal tendencies in higher education are a tendency that we can observe everywhere. And part of it is that these authors, Hadis and Dakide, put it in 2005 already, that in Indonesia, social sciences might graduate from the rule and tyranny of an authoritarian regime that refers to the new order, the Suharto time that ended in 1998. So there was a movement, according to them, from the authoritarian regime that framed and partly suppressed social sciences in these years to that of the market. The market, the commodification, the commercialization, the financial framing that we are all more or less obliged to obey to. Of course, we struggle against that, but the broader institutional framework is something we cannot completely get rid of it. And also already in 2005, Hero Nugroho said, education turned into a money-making business and activity. So we are all depending on funding sources. We are all depending on our university policies, and the university policy is depending on the political structures and the economic structures of the respective countries. And they expect from us that we do research that has practical use, not only for the sake of science or basic science, but also for applied sciences and basically for money-making activities. So this is something that is very general, but then we have to differentiate, of course, between the Southeast Asian countries, and there are national frameworks that are very authoritarian, and there is kind of censorship for social sciences. The most recent example now is Myanmar, but also in Thailand, in Singapore, in other countries, we have authoritarian tendencies that prevent our colleagues from speaking out freely. So we have to differentiate to what extent social sciences or social scientists are caught up in these political structures. The new challenges that go hand in hand with neoliberalization are the bureaucratization that David Graeber, who recently passed away, was working on, the bureaucratization and what Marilyn Strathern called the audit culture. This is something that we all experience in our everyday life, and we suffer from it, that our research strengths are measured with rankings, with publication output in a very often, not always, but in a very often in a very quantitative sense of scores and big data and so on. And the social sciences are often evaluated in ways that are quite similar to the natural sciences. So this differentiation between the disciplinary cultures should be taken more seriously by the policymakers, by our universities, by the institutions. And I think we social scientists should make them more aware of our particular needs and our particular strengths. That in our case, it's not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of having time and resources to go deeper into the respective fields and to learn more about complexities. And that takes more time than working with quantitative methods. Excuse me, the colleagues from economics and other disciplines. I do not want to polarize. I just wanted to emphasize different disciplinary cultures. Now, as we have the digitalization, and our today's meeting is part of it, and this is wonderful, but at the same time, it also shows new inequalities, brings them to the fore, the digital divides, the fact that not everybody has equal access to the digital devices, and not everybody has a strong internet. So these practical, technical, but basically also economical inequalities are coming to the fore in a new way, because it prevents many people from taking part in these kinds of meetings and encounters. But also the social distance that is created by the fact that we see only our faces and we cannot do things together. After this meeting today, we cannot have a coffee together or buka puasa together, because there will be one click, and that will create this social distance. So we can also only verbally exchange our perspectives. And that also holds true when we do, in my case, digital ethnography. We can only talk to people, and we cannot take part in the everyday life. And this is one of the most important fieldwork methods in anthropology: participant observation with dense participation, which is very much reduced when we can meet on screen. So now I want to come back to the more positive aspects, and this is that within Southeast Asia, you created certain forums, certain platforms for exchange, and I highly estimate that there are also initiatives that are not focusing on these very highly ranked international journals that are very much part of the hegemony of the so-called West, and often more or less determined by the structures in the United States or in Australia. So there are many initiatives on the ground in Southeast Asia where Southeast Asian scholars, social scientists, develop their own media for meeting, for high quality scholarly texts that can be distributed also across borders, and can stimulate the exchange within the region, within scholars of the region. And that brings me to the already 2 decades long discourse or debate on what would be Ilmu Social Asia, the social science in Asia. Is there an alternative discourse? Is there an alternative Southeast Asian or Asian social science? And if yes, how could that look like? So already back in the early 2000s, Farid Alatas suggested that the social science discourses in Southeast Asia should be informed by regional and local historical experiences and cultural practices, something that anthropologists always would subscribe to, that it should as well be informed by counter-Eurocentric, that means self-confident and discourses that are aware of the strengths and the peculiarities on the ground. What is specific in the way of thinking and in the way of practicing social sciences in non-European or non-Western contexts. That is part of decolonization. But at the same time, he emphasized very much that it should not be essentialist. So an alternative social science, in his view, should not claim that there is the Southeast Asian or the Asian perspective. It should not claim that there is one unity and everybody has to subscribe to that. To the contrary, he also stresses the plurality and the manifold aspects that people and the many contexts that people are working in. But it should be autonomous in the sense that I tried to describe before, self-confident and aware of peculiarities on the ground, and it should be alternative. I personally have a bit of a doubt concerning the term alternative, because if something is an alternative to something, then it still states there is a stable thing that I can create an alternative to. So the frame of reference would then still be the mainstream or the hegemonic unity, and this, in my view, does not have necessarily be the case. So practically, what kinds of alternative social sciences do we have in Southeast Asia? What comes to our mind is first Islamic knowledge, Islamic science. So the idea that there are certain values that social science or science in general should subscribe to. Science is never neutral. We know that from science and technology studies. Science is always framed by certain worldviews and by certain epistemologies, and religious science suggests that that should be Islam, and of course within the Islamic science there is a broad spectrum of, on the one hand, more fundamentalist scholars to very liberal ones. Yet in my view, this is, I must concede, this is a Western secular perspective. In my view, social science in general should not subscribe to a certain worldview or value structure, and therefore it should not associate itself with any religion, neither so-called traditional nor so-called world religions. So decentering, decolonizing, and diversifying Southeast Asian studies, as Benglan Go already suggested in 2011, provides more plurality, provides more of an input to deal with many different approaches and to discuss them. And part of that would also be local ways of knowing and seeing that are not, first of all, text-based, not first of all rational in the traditional sense, but engaging more expressive traditions, such as the arts, for example, or expressive genres that can also produce and mediate knowledge, knowledge that is more central, more embodied, and not too much focusing on the rational and verbal aspects. So that could be or should be integrated and taken seriously, not only as data for empirical research, but also as a valuable way of knowledge production. And another approach would be activist research, and please don't confuse that with applied research. It's not necessarily the same, because activist research tries to transform society to the better. And of course, we all know that there is no objective goal, what is better and what should be the ultimate aim for activist research, apart from the fact that we want a humane, a better world, not only for human beings, but also for the environment, for the climate, for all entities, not only the humans, but also the other than humans. This is different from applied research that is more focusing on the aspects of, yeah, commercial or commodified use or making use of our research results. So after these very general remarks, I would like to come back to something that Ita already has mentioned. This is one suggestion, one model, and I'm very much aware that there are many other valuable initiatives and other ways to organize collaboration. But what we did, UGM, Universitas Gadjah Mada, for so many years, since 2004, for several years also UNHAS, Universitas Hasanuddin in Sulawesi, and also for a short period UI, Universitas Indonesia, and University of Freiburg, our Southeast Asian study group, and my department of anthropology, and for several years also the Department of International Relations, Political Science. So we invented a model of tandem and team research where we brought or bring our students together in tandems and teams, and we teach them to collaborate in conducting fieldwork exercises. And the special thing is that we do this both here and there. So 1 year, the German students or the German-based students, not necessarily Germans, of course, but the German-based students would visit Indonesia and collaborate for 1 month with their Indonesian colleagues and peers. And the following year, the Indonesian students will visit Germany and conduct fieldwork exercises with their tandem and team partners on certain aspects of the German culture. So there is true reciprocity, and we guarantee that our results are always multi-perspective. So we always combine the view from the outside and the view from the inside. So in the book at hand, Bu Ita and Bu Melanie also elaborated on that aspect. The position, the positionality of being an insider and outsider is of course not fixed, and it's not necessarily always tied to nationality, but the historical experiences and the disciplinary culture differs, and it is much richer when we bring that together. So this is meant to be a contribution to a restructuring of the global project of social sciences as a debate among equals in a connected world with all its richness of differences and problems of inequalities. We do not want to deny that there are these problems of inequalities, but we try to see differences not as an obstacle, not as a hindrance, but as something that enriches our results, our perspectives, and our knowledge production. And instead of reducing social sciences to one area or to one region, we propose that we always recombine the positionalities and bring these different perspectives together. So this was a very nice exhibition that the Indonesian students organized back in 2018. Verstehen, understanding, is this hermeneutic view is of course something that anthropology takes very serious. And for this we need empirical fieldwork on the ground, and we cannot do that only in the digital space. But for obvious reasons, in 2020, we were forced to transfer our model in the digital space, and then we created a digital tandem research program together with Busita, who is also here today. Thank you for coming. And Papujo has been supporting us in many, many ways, and everybody was extremely flexible to transfer our model into this new format. And it worked pretty well, because then the German students did fieldwork in Freiburg and the Indonesian students did fieldwork in Yogyakarta and in Jakarta, but under a common umbrella topic and with a joint research question. And they exchanged their results, and they learned a lot from each other, not only from the research participants, but also from each other. So at least it was something that was much better than only doing fieldwork at home in your own comfort zone or in the area that you know best, but you could, or they could, compare with their team partners in the digital space. But of course, we also faced new challenges. Everybody knows that. Language problems, time zones as we have today, and I'm so sorry that we will disturb your buka puasa with this late afternoon meeting, but also technological problems, internet problems. But then something that we had not expected, there was on the student side reluctance to share data. So although we have the software now to exchange and to make it accessible to the partners, the students do not want to share their fieldwork data with people that they have never met personally. These team partners are only partners in the digital space. They have not built the same trust and friendship. They have not built the same communication structures that they did when we met personally in the years before. So this was an interesting observation, that all this enthusiasm with the new software and the digital methods came or had its limits when these more social aspects were included. And of course, talking about the results, as the students did mainly digital anthropology, the contexts were missing and the results were reduced to verbal data only. So all in all, I would say that Southeast Asian social studies are an extremely heterogeneous and dynamic intellectual movement. It's something that is in process, it's changing constantly, not only due to political circumstances or economic inequalities, but new global trends, and now, as nobody expected before, due to a global pandemic. So Southeast Asian social studies are, in my perspective, in need of overcoming epistemological and methodological nationalism. So I would not subscribe to European or German social studies, or neither I would subscribe to Southeast Asian studies in an exclusive manner, but I would always opt for overcoming this kind of methodological nationalism and opt for exchange and comparative transcultural and cross-disciplinary perspectives that strive for human and environmental justice in order to build better futures. Of course, now we have the chance to mix, to hybridize the online and the offline collaboration formats. And I'm looking forward to these new opportunities. I imagine that for the next fieldwork exercise, we can do the preparation via digital media, but then hopefully meet up in presence and do real participant observation again. And the most important part is that the institutions and the university, but also the national policy should support and create a new generation of politically free critical scholars who also get the time and the space and the support in formats that fit into the cultures of the social sciences. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'm looking forward to Ibu Azirah's comments and input from her perspective as a scholar of linguistics, because these linguistic and language, more language than linguistic probably, aspects are very crucial when it comes to practical collaboration. Thanks again for your patience. And I hand over to Ita or directly to Azirah, up to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Judith, for your reflection and grounded critical analysis, and also recommendations on contemporary ways, realities, and challenges of social science making, the formations of social science in Southeast Asia. I think a lot of us accept that the knowledge production in social science did serve the state, the authoritarian state, and now we are serving the neoliberalization. Thank you also for mentioning Farid Alatas, autonomous social science. He is very concerned to pay attention to the definite local problems and with definite appropriate and peculiar methodology in Southeast Asia. So I believe that everyone is thinking and rethinking about that. So please, dear everyone, I kindly invite you to write down your questions in the question and answer bullets. I would be happy to read your questions or maybe also ask you directly to raise the questions later in the question and answer sessions. Now, let us have our discussant, Prof. Azirah. She entitled her presentation as Research in Social Sciences in Southeast Asia, Challenges and Opportunities. Prof. Azirah, 30 minutes ahead is yours.
Thank you very much. Is that, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Herman, Professor Judith Schele, and Dr. Ita for the invitation to be a discussant at this session. I'm honored to be able to give some comments on the chapter by Professor Schele. I think it's raised a number of important issues in social sciences, which many of us have thought about. So I give the title of my talk as Research in Social Sciences in Southeast Asia, looking at challenges and opportunities. So I'll actually bring up some of the points that have been mentioned by Judith, and then I will elaborate and give my own perspectives as well. But before I start, I would like to give some background information about my own experiences so that you can see where I'm coming from. I'm from the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, so my research has mainly to do with linguistics, English in the region, language contact, also higher education in ASEAN. But over the past more than a decade, I've been involved in actually in other at the university. So I was in charge of the Humanities Research Cluster for about 5 years, where I tried to promote humanities and social sciences, research and getting people to work with one another, and also getting people, researchers in the social sciences to work with people in the sciences and medicine. So that was something I focused on between 2010 to 2015. Then in 2015, we set up the Center for ASEAN Regionalism at the University of Malaya. At that time, Malaysia was the chair of ASEAN. And we thought that, actually we looked around and there was no center for ASEAN in the universities at that time, although I think now there are actually more than one. So we set up a Center for ASEAN Regionalism to look at the 3 pillars of ASEAN, and we started a lot of activities on focusing on ASEAN. And then the Asia-Europe Institute is another entity that I've been working on, although at the moment I'm not actually heading any of these. I actually am on research leave. So the Asia-Europe Institute is an institute that looks at engagement between Asia and Europe. So we've been involved in a lot of Asia-Europe activities, comparative regionalism, yeah, and other works like that. And my own interests, I belong to the International Association of Applied Linguistics, which is a body that has more than 30 affiliates around the world. And we focus on looking at issues in applied linguistics that we can all actually research on. And within that particular international association, we actually formed the ILA ASEAN network. So we have a network of 5 affiliates from the ASEAN region, where we have a symposium every year and we talk about common issues and challenges in applied linguistics in this network. No? And my own area of research has focused on language contact in Southeast Asia, English in ASEAN, and also higher education in ASEAN. So that's actually the background I come from. And I'm very happy to be able to comment on this thought-provoking chapter by Schele 2021. I won't actually summarize what has been mentioned because she's already talked about this. So Judith has mentioned, amongst other things, about neoliberalization and how social scientists have to deal with that, research for policy and also research for business. She mentioned applied social sciences, the need for reports for sponsors. So we are actually guided by what actually sponsors require us to do. And she also spoke about bureaucratization and the audit culture, which I think all of us are experiencing in our universities in Southeast Asia. And I will be talking about that as well. Rankings, indexes, and audits that could stifle creative thought. Social sciences, which are forced into structures determined by natural sciences. So that actually, I think we can see in the KPIs, in the key performance indicators that we have in our universities. There's also the reference to the inter-referencing in and out and on Southeast Asia, and also work related to ASEAN associations. And I'll also touch on publications, the kinds of publications that we are required to do for related to rankings and bureaucratization, and also regional and local publications. So I will focus on challenges that we face and also opportunities that we have in the social sciences. So I'll talk about our research, our work being grounded in real world problems. Yeah, how do we relate our work to global challenges? How do we show that our work actually matters? That we can contribute to actually global and regional challenges, global and regional issues. And I talk about the importance of being familiar with global agendas. For example, the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. That is something we try and link our research in applied linguistics to. I talk about regional perspectives, how it's important to have regional perspectives and also actually local priorities. I also highlight the importance of working with people in other disciplines, not just specialists, not just academics and researchers, but also practitioners. And I also will highlight the importance of intra-regional collaboration and also trans-regional partnerships, collaborative research and publications. And finally, I will also touch on why it's also important to engage with policymakers and the public. Looking at global and regional challenges for social science research, I was often asked when I was running the research cluster about what is it that the humanities and the social science can contribute? What are the tangible outcomes? How can we work with other specialists to try and solve global, regional, national problems? So I think for social scientists, an awareness of prominent universal documents that would actually raise our understanding about how our research contributes to a universal global agenda. For example, the United Nations SDGs or the IR 4.0, I think that's important. It is important especially to highlight actually what we can contribute actually for some, for people who are not in our disciplines or who are outside the social sciences, it's sometimes quite hard for them to see actually why our research is important. So by linking actually our work with universal documents and global agendas, that is actually one way of showing that our research also matters. Yeah, and then looking at stakeholder engagement. Yeah? Okay, and looking at all these big challenges and global issues, what is the place of social scientists? Yeah? How can we complement inputs by other stakeholders? Yeah, and also what is actually becoming actually quite relevant in trying to get funding, yeah, in trying to actually get our work recognized. How do we venture into more practical and policy engaged research efforts that aim, for example, to contribute to achieving the SDGs? So these are the 17 SDGs which have been approved by the United Nations, and they're actually they've actually been transferred into various documents, national documents and also ASEAN documents. So if you look at these 17 SDGs, a lot of our work can actually fit into so many of them. We can actually contribute towards achieving many of the sustainable development goals. Yeah, and I think when we write research proposals and we try and convince others that our research actually matters, it is actually quite useful to link our work to something like the SDGs. And if you look at the documents in ASEAN, also national blueprints, you will see that the SDGs have actually been transferred into these documents. We also have the ASEAN community, the ASEAN Vision 2020, in which we have the SDGs given prominence. So when you link your work to that and you refer to that, actually, then it makes your work appear more relevant and more useful. And then you find that all the elements in the ASEAN community blueprints, the three blueprints, they either feed back to or they support the SDGs. And all the SDGs also have equivalent goals in the three ASEAN community blueprints. So, which is why I tend to emphasize the SDGs in the work that I do in the International Association of Applied Linguistics. I also think it's important for people in Southeast Asia working on ASEAN and regional matters to know about the ASEAN policies and guidelines. So the ASEAN blueprints, the three pillars, if you're doing work on any of the three pillars, social, cultural, economic or political, it's actually very useful to know about the three blueprints. There's also the master plan on ASEAN connectivity, which is useful to be aware of. For people who work in higher education issues, there's the ASEAN work plan for education that I think there's a new one which has just been created for 2021 to 2025, and then it's important to know about the ASEAN community, one vision, one identity, one community. If we're actually going to be working on any of these three pillars on ASEAN. I refer to some publications on ASEAN. Here you have one on climate change. You can see it is interdisciplinary. It looks at climate change. It looks at something regional in ASEAN. It's on the social sciences. There's another one on Malaysia and the ASEAN community. So you've got Malaysian perspectives on a regional topic, and it's on, I think it's on comparative politics. And in 2017, we had a conference under the Center for ASEAN Regionalism. So we got people to come together from different disciplines in the social sciences to talk about Malaysian perspectives on ASEAN regionalism. And we thought that was useful in getting local perspectives on this particular topic. And we managed to publish a book that came out in actually 2019 on this topic. Another important area which Judith has also mentioned has to do with working with disciplines, engaging with professions, and trying to solve societal problems, because I think this all has to do with making your research relevant and recognized as important to people in other disciplines also, So working in interdisciplinary research has become increasingly important. You look at the funding calls, what funders are looking for, Very, very often they are projects that involve more than one discipline. Quite often they involve more than two disciplines, So that's an important area to work on, to create stronger links with practice, to help solve societal problems, to increase humanity-oriented scientists, So we get people in the humanities working with people in medicine, or people in the humanities working with people in environmentalists, And funding bodies and projects that are interdisciplinary usually often require the role of both the sciences and the humanities. For example, we get calls in Malaysia on projects on active aging, which require the participation of people from different disciplines, projects on looking at sustainable cities, for example, projects related to global challenges. All of them actually require researchers from both humanities and also the sciences. It is also, I think, important to communicate with, how do you communicate with specialists in other disciplines? Sometimes I think that can be quite a challenge. Making actually other people understand the work that you do, not just specialists in other disciplines, but also what I'll mention afterwards. How do you make the public understand what you're doing, that what you're doing is important? So this is also an important area, communicating with people in other disciplines. How do you actually make your research and what you have done understood by other researchers? So you would have to actually resort to actually more plain language to get yourself, to get your research understood by people who are not in your field. Okay, this is an example of what we do in applied linguistics. We talk about solving practical everyday problems, but we also talk about applying available theories, methods, and results, but also we highlight developing new theoretical and methodological frameworks in linguistics. So what we do in applied linguistics, we consider it very often interdisciplinary. We're working with people in other disciplines. We usually would like to solve practical problems of language and communication, but we do this by applying available theories and methods, or we develop new theories and methods which are more suitable depending on the context in which we are working in. Yeah? And our focus is quite often on practical everyday problems related to language and communication. Yeah? And I also looked at actually research that's related to current issues. And I was asked actually when the pandemic started, what can you contribute? What can applied linguists contribute to this, to the discussions on COVID-19? And actually, I discovered there was a lot that we could do. And I find publications, for example, by Jürgen Ruhlen on COVID-19 in ASEAN, COVID-19 and ASEAN regionalism, another article on COVID-19 and in the field of economics. Yeah. And in terms of language issues, when I thought about the question about what actually applied linguists can do in relation to COVID-19, there are actually several issues that we can actually work on. And we did run a webinar on this particular topic under the ILA ASEAN network, where we got together people from different ASEAN countries. We realized that in looking at the pandemic and the issues that have arisen in this pandemic, there's a renewed focus on linguistic diversity, yeah, and actually the way it intersects with social inclusion, yeah. So there's a lack of information we find, or a lack of understanding of the disease, a lack of information about public health for groups such as migrants, refugees, the elderly, the young, and people with disabilities, yeah. So these are issues that we noticed that actually we could actually contribute in terms of understanding of information, reaching out to people who are not able to get the right information, because a lot of the information in the region, if you look at the pamphlets and information that goes out, it's either in the national language of the country or it's in English. Yeah? But ASEAN has got so many different minority and indigenous languages. Even in Malaysia, we've got indigenous groups, we've got different communities who don't speak either the national language or English. Yeah. So how do we reach out to these people? Yeah. What do we have to do to ensure that they also are informed about the pandemic and what they should do to try and actually curb the spread of the disease? Yeah. So the best way to fight the outbreak is to make people aware of how it spreads and how it can be stopped. So from this, we could see that there are many ways that linguists can actually contribute towards that particular discussion and debate. Yeah, I then move on to what has been highlighted by Judith on intra-regional exchanges, inter-regional exchanges, trans-regional exchanges. Yeah, and I agree that it's really very important to maintain links. We cannot work in isolation. It's important to maintain links with researchers around the world. It is important to have special interest groups that come together, either within the region, between Southeast Asian centers, between associations that are involved in common topics of interest, also between interregional as well, between Asia and Europe, between ASEAN and the EU, yeah. And when you have network activities, yeah, the network activities can get regional members together. They can facilitate joint events like what we have, our symposium on ILA ASEAN. And then we can try and think of projects where we all could work together on common issues that affect the whole region, yeah? Bringing our different perspectives together, yeah? And if you look at international funding, these days, there's a lot of opportunities for people to come from different parts of the world, yeah? For networks to come together. If you look at the recent call for Erasmus Plus, there's a new call that covers, I think, research programs for so many years to come, yeah? Different types of research projects you can embark on. I've been involved coming to an end, the Erasmus Plus capacity building in higher education, where we get people from the EU working with people in ASEAN. Yeah, so we've got we try and develop research in the context of Laos and Malaysia, but working together with partners from the Netherlands, from Germany, and also from Sweden. Yeah, so that's an example of a multi-party network, and we actually learn from each other. It's not just one way. Yeah? It's also it's eye-opening for both sides. Yeah, we try and get good practices from one another. So that is one example. And there's also the credit mobility programs where you can actually work with different universities in EU and ASEAN. Yeah, working on academic programs. Yeah, working on exchanges of information between academics and also students. Yeah. Okay, then alternative social science discourse. This was one of the items that was discussed by Judith. Yeah. The indigenization of social sciences across Southeast Asia, and about theories and methods that are more appropriate for the region. Yeah, and I agree that we should not be essentialists in this respect. Do we need unique methods or theories? Yeah, in this region, I think it depends very much on what we are researching. Yeah, for example, if I look at discourse analysis, the theories and approaches that have been adopted are applicable in the Southeast Asian context, just as much as they are applicable in Europe. But for example, in other areas like world Englishes or English as a lingua franca, yeah, where the term native speaker, yeah, is now much debated. Yeah, there's this affects English language education in Southeast Asia. So the ideology of English as a native language, that's been dominant in the past, yeah. But that's highly debated now, because in the past you get terms like English as a foreign language, English as a second language, but now English no longer has one single base of authority, prestige, or normativity. Yeah, so that is what we do in world Englishes, and we have come up with alternative theories, alternative approaches. Yeah, so it depends on the area you're researching. It's coming up with approaches that suit the local context, and also maybe modifying, or actually sometimes you can actually use existing theories and approaches as well. Another area I mentioned just now is English as a lingua franca. This is actually looking at what actually should go into language education. Yeah, and this is currently being much debated in the ASEAN context. Okay, within the English as a native language ideology, there's often a strict adherence to certain varieties of English. And therefore, in certain countries, you have only people from certain countries that are employed as teachers. Yeah, but this is actually becoming to be seen more and more as a myth. The native English is that the native English is the only norm worth teaching. So that's actually currently being debated a lot under English as a lingua franca in ASEAN. So there are a lot of changes being carried out, especially in language education and in the curriculum in the ASEAN countries. And I think it's worth actually coming up with an ASEAN-wide policy on language in relation to English and in relation to multilingualism. Another topic that has been discussed is about publications. Yeah, the chase for certain types of publications, the international publications such as the ones indexed in Scopus and SSCI. Yeah, I think we are all faced with that in our KPIs, key performance indicators, in our universities in the region. I think the university I come from has been actually involved in the QS rankings for many years. Yeah, and therefore the criteria that goes into the rankings are the criteria that actually gets actually transferred into the university system. So we have actually looked at KPIs for social sciences and the social sciences. There's been many debates about what's suitable for the social sciences, and that we cannot have the same KPI as what the sciences have. So we have actually changed that. We have different criteria for the social sciences, from the sciences and from people in medicine. Yeah, and even in medicine, I think there are differences between clinicians and others as well. But still, I think it's still, the focus is still very much on Scopus and SSCI publications. In fact, SSCI would be the #1 priority. Yeah. So at one time, when we were coming up with the, what do you call it? The tracks, for the social sciences and the sciences in our university. Initially, I think the books were very much pushed aside, and there was a huge emphasis on just articles in SSCI journals, yeah. But we have actually managed to convince management that books are very important for the social sciences and the humanities. So that is one of the KPIs that we have for social sciences and humanities at the University of Malaya. However, I think even within the social sciences, there's been a lot of discussion about what is suitable for people in the business faculty and economics, for people in the law faculty, for people in the Academy of Malay Studies. Yeah. So Academy of Malay Studies people will say that they publish mainly only in local journals, and that they're not able to publish in SSCI journals. So that is one of the discussions that have taken place. In certain areas in the social sciences, I think business and economics, many of them prefers articles to book publications. Yeah, then there are other social science areas that emphasize books more than research articles. But over the years, many years have gone by, and SSCI and Scopus actually articles are still actually highly important in the social sciences. For I think not just the university I come from, but I believe for universities in other parts of Southeast Asia as well. So we've had to constantly actually convince people who are responsible that other kinds of publications are important. Yeah, coming up with books are important. Coming up with publishing in local journals or journals which are regional, which may not be indexed in SSCI or Scopus, that they also contribute to the scholarship. And in Malaysia, we've got the Malaysian Citation Center, which actually collects scholarly work in journals, conference proceedings, book chapters, and they are all included in the Malaysian Citation Index. So there have been efforts to actually try and actually compile all these other publications as well. So local journals, regional journals, I mean, we have discussed about coming up with a regional journal on applied linguistics where we discuss regional issues, issues which are important to people in the region. But I think we need to look at the policies which have been implemented over the years, the focus on SSCI and Scopus. Has the policy actually raised standards for scholarship? Has it actually done that, or has it discouraged faculty? So that's still an ongoing debate. For some people, they have actually work very hard to try and get published in the journals which are counted more than others. For others, I think they've either actually not been so encouraged, and they have continued to publish in their own local publications and in book chapters. So that, I think, whether it's raised standards for scholarship, that is still being discussed. No doubt the numbers have gone up tremendously. The numbers for SSCI Scopus articles have gone up tremendously in my university. And we can see people actually working together with others in other disciplines to get published in certain journals. So whether policy has really raised standards or just discouraged faculty, that is something which is open to debate. Okay, then in terms of publications also, there's been a lot of discussion on supporting publishing of research in other languages, because we've got, for applied linguistics, we work on minority, indigenous, heritage languages, so we have said that they cannot only be the object of research, but they also need to become the medium through which all this is shared. And this is particularly relevant given that the United Nations has declared 2022 to 2032 to be the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. I then would like to highlight also another point, which has been mentioned by Judith, about engaging with policymakers. We work with stakeholders within and outside academia in different disciplines, different parts of the world. We disseminate research findings to ministries, to regional organizations. That's also important to get others to actually understand what we're doing and to know that what we're doing is also important. Engaging with the public is another area that I think is actually important for social scientists. It's because we would like our what we do to be actually to benefit not just our group of scholars or researchers, but we would also like to actually our findings to benefit a greater group of people. Yeah, so we've got responsibilities towards members of the public and the wider society. We need to ensure that our research is disseminated and understood. And I think many people write for media, articles in the media. That's a very good way of getting what you do disseminated widely. And also, I think it's very important that you're able to communicate research to the lay audience. Yeah. So I think there's a special skill for that. And I think it's very important for universities to actually have people trained in that, in communicating research and findings using the language that's appropriate, that can be understood by the lay people, to ensure public understanding of expert views and findings at public forums or in the media, because you often have complaints that people don't quite understand what they're told by the medical doctors, yeah, by medical specialists. So how do you actually convey information? Yeah, how do you ensure that there is public understanding, for example, of expert views on obesity, yeah, to the public? Yeah, so this is an important area also for social scientists. Yeah? So my concluding remarks are that social science research actually has to take into account a lot of new developments in a changing world. Yeah, how do we actually adapt? How do you make ourselves more relevant? Yeah, how do you make our findings? How do you make our others understand that our findings are really important? Yeah, we need conversations, collaborations. Yeah, we need comparative work. We need cross-disciplinary research. We need to look at transcultural perspectives. Yeah, we should get involved in regional and interregional projects where we have exchange of opinions, exchange of views, exchange of perspectives. Yeah, comparative studies are very important, and I think comparative regionalism, yeah, that's a new area in Southeast Asia. I think that should be developed even more. There, of course, will be more and more connections, as Judith mentioned, with through digital technology and through social media. I think that's also a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Yeah? It will actually allow people to have to meet actually more people than they would at conferences, face-to-face conferences. But of course, there are also limitations. So how do we actually handle all this? Yeah. And also there needs to be more global critical discourse across boundaries, and working with ASEAN, because we come from different backgrounds, different levels of development. It's also very important to have capacity building across ASEAN. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. Azirah, for providing response and comments to Professor Schele's presentation by highlighting the challenge in social science in Southeast Asia, as well as the opportunities as well. You put forward many insights and also alternative discourse, inter and intra-discipline, on doing research and knowledge productions on humanities and social sciences with other specialists on other sciences as well. I believe everyone agrees on that. You also mentioned that it is prime important to maintaining links with multi-party network. All right, everyone. There are many questions on the question and answer bullets. I will invite first, I think, Dr. Eric. Please open your mic and please directly ask to whom you address your question to.
Great, thank you. Is this working? I hope so. Let's see. Yeah. No, it's not. All right. No, my question was to Judith, actually, about the collaboration between UGM and Freiburg. And I'd be interested to know a little bit more of the content of that collaboration, the actual kind of the actual projects or work that was done. I was sort of wondering if it was because of the ways you talked about reciprocity and so forth. I mean, was there for example, was there ethnographic work being done by Indonesian researchers in Germany, or were basically all the projects based in Indonesia? And it's also a kind of much broader sort of issue I'm sort of interested in, which is that I think one of the strengths of anthropology has always been its the methodology of ethnography, where one puts oneself outside of one's own sort of familiar context. I think that some of the critiques of anthropology, which have kind of looked at like anthropology as a colonial project and so forth, I mean, while they're all relevant and important, I think sometimes they miss the way that methodology developed and the kind of questions that gets asked and the insights that come from that kind of cross-cultural research. And then a lot of anthropology that's done by, I mean, not only in Indonesians, but just generally across Southeast Asia by Southeast Asian anthropologists in their own societies, often is kind of in their own context, which of course is fine. There's not, it's not a problem, but I'm very interested in ways that one can develop more sort of cross-cultural ethnographic projects where people from different, from different contexts are entering into a variety of different contexts to, pursue anthropology in what one might consider a kind of traditional mode. So thank you. And also I've got to leave in a little bit. So if I leave early, I'm sorry about that. I just want to apologize in advance. Thank you.
May I answer directly?
Yes, please.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much to Azirah for this wonderful summary and additional comments and input. The topic of language is so complex and so extremely important. I hope that we can come back to that during the discussion and exchange our experiences with this as well. But thank you so much to Eric Thompson. I'm happy to get the opportunity to clarify that. Exactly, this is the reason why we are so happy with this model, because it's truly reciprocal in the sense that 1 year we are doing research together in Indonesia and the following year in Germany. So it's this part of the project of provincializing Europe as well. Europe or Germany is a normal field site for anthropologists. And in both constellations, we bring the outsider's view and the insider's view, or these so-called positionalities of outsider and insider together. And that makes it more complete and more rich in my view or in our experience. So this is the most important point. And as you said, maybe Sita and Pujo can also elaborate on that. Sita and me published an article where we also explained this background that Indonesian anthropologists have been trained in, and probably other social scientists as well, have been trained to focus mainly on their own society, on doing research in Indonesia. Different ethnic groups, of course, but mainly in Indonesia. And I had a discussion with somebody from the embassy, and he said, it's still like this. We have to focus on Indonesia first. We are still a developing country, and why should our scholars do research abroad? Which is, in my view, quite narrow-minded, because I think Europe, Africa, Latin America, or the Americas should be the field site, the natural field site for a curious and globally or cosmopolitan-oriented young scholar. So we do our very best to invite Indonesian anthropologists to Freiburg, and Mas Pujo is supporting that to a very high degree. and make them aware that only comparative research will enable us to see certain things in our own societies in a different or clearer way. So it's just the other way around. For Indonesian anthropologists, Indonesia used to be the main focus of their research, whereas for German anthropologists, the so-called Global South used to be the main focus. So in our project, we tried to reconfigure that, to play with these roles and with these epistemological backgrounds and bring people together both here and there. And we always have one umbrella topic that we explore 1 year in Indonesia and in the following year in Germany then. And as I wrote in that article, my personal favorite umbrella topic was when we did research on academic cultures that differ widely in comparing Indonesia and Germany, Freiburg University. And we learned so much from the Indonesian students' research results on our university culture, and hopefully the other way around as well. And we also published that together and that brings me to Azirah's intervention, in both languages, in English and Indonesian language. So yeah, I don't want to steal too much time, but thanks for the opportunity to clarify that, because I think this reciprocity should be normalized in the future of social sciences, that all aspects of culture in all areas or regions of the world are or should become the topic of our research interest.
Thank you, Judith, for your response. Maybe as you mentioned before, responding to Azirah's summary, you mentioned about language. Now Miriam Looking is asking about language to Prof. Azirah. Please, Prof. Azirah.
Should I ask my question again?
Yes,
or
Miriam, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, it also actually connects to what Judith just said, because I think when I first saw the book Budaya Barat dalam Kacamata Timur, the Indonesian publication about the UGM Freiburg exchange project, that's when I first heard about Freiburg, and that's why I came to Freiburg, because I was fascinated that there is an Indonesian language publication about a town in Germany. And of course, being an alumni of that project, I learned so much from the Indonesian anthropologists' visits to Freiburg. So my question is about language. And as I said, I was fascinated by this book. And also now, after I worked for many years about Indonesia, I keep thinking, shouldn't we have more Indonesian language scholarly discussions? I think, of course, it's evident that we do our research and our interviews in Indonesian, but then when we go back to our desks, we somehow, like during the evaluation process, we move to English, because English is obviously the international science language. It's also the language of the more high-ranked journals, as you also said in your talk, Ibu Azirah. And I see this as I wonder if it is an obstacle to make social sciences and area studies more equal, because obviously for people from the region, and also for myself, that I'm not a native speaker in English, it's challenging to publish in English. But also on an epistemological level, I think that the language we think in shapes our thoughts and concepts, and maybe there is a surplus or a higher value of also having scholarly discussions in my case, in Bahasa Indonesia, because I work on Indonesia, but also in other local languages. So I was wondering, also more like to Ibu Azirah, from your research on ASEAN, why English is the lingua franca and not Bahasa Indonesia, which has so many speakers, even though I understand that it's probably more neutral to take an external language rather than taking a language of one of the member states. Yeah, but just to hear like what is maybe also your utopian opinion about it. Why do we use English in ASEAN and also in scholarly discussions? And where would be maybe windows of opportunity to speak in other languages? Yeah, and I think also Judith mentioned this, that the local language is so important for practical matters. But I also know that, that we, as anthropologists, we often have academic discussions in the local language in the field. So I would also be interested from Judith to hear about her experience also of having Indonesian language scholarly discussions and maybe also publications.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, this topic about English being the lingua franca of ASEAN, there's quite a bit of research going on about it. It is actually the official language of ASEAN. It's in the ASEAN Charter. It is the official language of ASEAN, so it's the language that's used in all ASEAN meetings. Yeah, why Malay was not chosen, that I'm not sure, because I think there was not much discussion on that any other language should be the official language apart from ASEAN. So the issue about English being the lingua franca of ASEAN, and actually the push for English in education, not just higher education, but also basic education. Over the years, we've seen actually English coming into the curriculum, more and more into the curriculum, pushing out other languages. So you see actually even in universities, we used to teach neighboring languages a lot more in the past, but you can see that's declining. And in schools, you see that English is taught in primary schools in all countries, except perhaps Indonesia. Yeah, it's come to the primary school as early as standard 1, primary 1. In certain countries, they start at primary 3, but I think in almost all ASEAN countries, it starts at primary 1. And if you look at the medium of instruction in universities across Southeast Asia, I think for postgraduate programs, they're changing almost entirely in some countries to English because of the internationalization of higher education. So there's a push actually for, global rankings for international students, that's actually leading to English being used in the education domain. And I think what actually needs to be done is that I think there should be more efforts. Currently there are no policies. I think barely any policies on multilingualism in ASEAN, and there's no ASEAN-wide policy on language. I think in Europe, you've got a lot of policies in universities, in higher education, language policies, across the EU, But in ASEAN, I don't think we've got language policies. There are no ASEAN-wide language policies. English has actually taken over many of the languages, But we see efforts, for example, in the Philippines, in Thailand, in certain countries where people are promoting multilingual mother tongue education. So you can see that in some communities, the mother tongue language is being used now in schools, because there's a belief that you can't actually, you can't just teach everything in English and think that the students are going to actually develop English language proficiency to the level that you need. You have to actually start teaching subjects in the mother tongue. So there are efforts carried out, especially in the Philippines, for mother tongue based multilingual education. So such efforts are taking place in the region at the moment, but I think more needs to be done. I think there should be actually policies that are put into place to ensure that languages do not die out, that we maintain multilingualism, in different domains, not just in education, but in other domains as well.
Yeah, let me
Yes,
continue.
please.
Yeah?
Yes, please.
Let me continue. I think for pragmatic reasons, there is no way around to use English for communication. We all would prefer to have a more counter-hegemonic and more locally grounded way to communicate. But to be honest, I don't have an idea how to do that, how to organize that. In Freiburg, we have an Indonesian language course for preparing the students going to Indonesia. And Papujo just informed me a few days ago that he wants to invest some money to provide a German course for Indonesian students in Jogja before they depart for Germany. But to be honest, in both cases, the level that students achieve in a 1 or 2 semester course once a week is not sufficient for conducting interviews. So when the Indonesian students do research in Freiburg, they do it either with their German partners as interpreters, translators, or they do it in English with Germans who are able to communicate in English. And in Indonesia, it's basically the same. In Indonesia, it's more complicated, as everybody is aware of. We have so many local languages. And last semester, when Sita, Ingo, and me evaluated the digital tandem exchange, and when we were a bit disappointed that students were so reluctant to exchange their fieldwork data, this was one justification that the students provided. They said, my fieldwork data, they are in local languages. And it's so difficult to translate that into Indonesian and then even more into English. So that costs too much time and effort, and we also feel insecure if it is accurate. And that leads us back to Azirah's suggestion that there should be not this one normative perfect English like it is in Great Britain, but that we should be more tolerant and more open, because basically in these encounters, it's not a matter of linguistic accuracy, it's just a matter of communication and understanding each other. So I do not have another idea and another pragmatic solution than doing our very best to learn the respective national languages and apart from that using English, but in the way such as suggested by Azirah.
Thank you, Prof. Azirah and Prof. Schele. Would you please also comment on Diane's question about the challenges, how to cope the oligarchist tentacles that influence everywhere, from policymakers to grassroots key opinion leader, and also from Ibu Erni, wait a minute, Ibu Erni, who is asking about how to meet the challenge of reluctance to share data, particularly which deal with practical everyday problem data required to provide input for improvement in social or educational sectors to create a regional commitment on a particular sector. Maybe, Judith, you want to respond first?
Yeah, thank you for this very fundamental and broad question. Of course, we are all caught within these inequalities and power structures, and we cannot pretend that we are able to overcome that completely. To the contrary, as social scientists, I think we should integrate these, not only the differences that I was talking about, but also the inequalities, and treat them as data and have a critical perspective on that and do our very best to become aware of them ourselves and make them transparent and make our audience and readers aware of them. So it's not that we are outside all power structures and structures of inequality, but within that framework, we can experiment, we can struggle, and we can do our best to raise the critical consciousness of these inequalities. And language is only one part of it. We also touched the demands of university policy, of funding organizations, of what is expected when there are new calls for proposals, as was mentioned by Bu Azirah. So all these things are part of it. And yeah, again, as social scientists, we should have a critical perspective on that, and we should try to remain as independent as possible. And that's why we also should insist on doing fundamental research and not only applied research that serves the interests of a certain order or a certain expectation or a certain commercial interest. So struggle against neoliberalization of universities worldwide is something that we as social scientists should take serious. So that was the first question. Could you please repeat the second one? I missed it.
Give me a second. How to meet the challenge of reluctance to share data, particularly which deal with practical everyday problem data required to,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are still in the middle of that process, and we do not have a solution yet, but I think, or I suppose, that a possible solution will go into the direction that I just indicated, that in future we will hopefully not reduce ourselves to digital methods of collaboration. I hope that in the near future we can combine digital ways of joint evaluation of data with personal encounters, with personal friendships and trust that can only develop between scholars once they meet, not only for conferences, not only for workshops, or not only for Zoom meetings, but in day-to-day professional and personal life. So I guess once we know each other and we trust each other, once we have done fieldwork in presence again together, then we will not be that reluctant to share our data with our research partners, because then we have that this social or communicative and trustful basis again. So that's what I suppose. But yeah, we will try out. I think this is an ongoing project, and we always have to face new challenges and integrate new methods and platforms and media.
Terima kasih, Bu Judith. Prof. Azirah, do you want to respond as well?
Well, with regard to the first question about how do we cope with all this, what's expected of us, like in the university system, I think there's no getting out of the emphasis that may disadvantage some social scientists, like the emphasis on the kinds of projects you should do to get funding and how do you get promoted, what do you need to get promoted and what do you need to reach your KPI every year to ensure that your job is safe as well. So I think somehow I think that there is still, on the one hand, you just still have to actually target for the publications that are expected of you in journals that are expected of the management. But at the same time, you can also, I think, still actually publish like in the media, to get your opinions across, in other kinds of publications, in books as well. So it's actually having to actually do both. Funding bodies that give out grants, you have no choice sometimes but to look at the theme that they offer. And without that, without complying, you don't get the money. You could do your own research, but without the funding. So it's actually a very difficult challenge to overcome. With regard to working with, is it working across borders? Is it? How do you make it easier to share data? Well, that one I'm not very sure about, because I think if it's through digitalization, it's quite difficult because there's no face-to-face component. But we work. I've been involved in this big project where we have a consortium of like 7 universities and people from different countries and from EU and ASEAN. It's not easy actually to handle a consortium like that with different cultures, different personalities, different way of doing things. But I think it's in such a situation, I think there has to be, I think that intercultural understanding is important, and actually a tolerance, flexibility about how people do things in different cultures. Even, if you look at research ethics, what could be so clear to some people in certain countries that have actually got the research ethics system in the universities for a long time. It may be totally alien for people in certain parts of Southeast Asia that's never had a research ethics system in the universities. And what would be what might be considered something usual, like getting informed consent for your data, in your research, might actually be quite alien to some people who come from a different culture, and it could be also a different way of getting informed consent. So even research ethics actually requires an understanding of different cultures, and what is appropriate in one context may not be appropriate in another. So it's a lot of understanding and tolerance and flexibility.
Thank you, Prof. Azirah. Next, I will invite Mas Dedi from Hong Kong. You can open your mic and directly ask your question.
Thank you, Mbak Bu Ita. My question is like what I wrote in room chat. I just read my question. When I use the cyber proletariat concept from Nick Dyer for thinking as an optic to look at the situating everyday life of Indonesian migrant workers in Hong Kong, I find a knowledge gap that occur when I dig up information in both online and offline contexts. I couldn't feel a true face about the feeling of being proletariat among migrants when I tried to observe their expression on social media. However, social media has provided space for them to be free from the various normative pressure of everyday life in their employer home. The pandemic also forced me to use digital or virtual ethnography to see the everyday life of migrant workers in Hong Kong. My question is very simple. Can a hybrid approach in ethnography convince researchers to get convincing reproduction of knowledge in social science?
Please, thank you, Mas Dedi. Please, maybe Prof. Azirah first, and then Prof. Schele.
I don't quite understand. Is it getting data from the media, complementing the data face-to-face physical data?
That's right.
Or maybe Prof. Schele first.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is exactly what I tried to suggest, or what I'm hoping for, that in future we can, more or less make the best out of these two worlds. Right now we are in the middle of the digitalization of social sciences and of all sciences, and we are now very much aware of the limitations that we experience, but at the same time, now we become also aware of the limitations that we had when we did it in the old conventional way only, because then we met for a certain period of time, for a conference or for a workshop, or for, in our case, for a fieldwork exercise, but that was limited due to financial restraints and time restraints. So that was limited to a certain period, and then it was over. Whereas now I think we can learn from all these experiences that we made in the last year to combine these methods. And when I think of your example, migrant workers, for them, digital ways to communicate have been part of their normal social life for a very, very long time already, because they always had to overcome this distance, and they have been used to communicate via social media or via all kinds of digital devices. But again, I suppose that it changes now during the times of the pandemic, and I think this can become an issue or a topic of research. So our scholarly curiosity should see or can see that as data, as something to explore what people make out of it, how they how they make sense of it, how it is changing and adapting to new circumstances, and in the post-pandemic time, what will have changed, what will be kept, what have we learned from these experiences in these unusual period. What can we transfer to the post-pandemic methodology? So I think this is more or less the future of social science methodology. And as I said, I think it's the turn of the next generation to be creative and inventive and to be also pragmatic and make the best of all these possibilities.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Maybe I'll just add
Schele.
a little.
Yes.
I think with all this increased use of social data from the social media, we've got a lot of people researching on data from different platforms. So there's also, it's given rise to also discussions on research ethics. And I think currently there are lots of actually guidelines being formulated for research ethics for data that comes from the internet. Because what can be open platforms, yeah? You think that it is data which is free for all, but actually there are many issues that are that come up as well, because for instance, do the participants in the platform actually know that they're going to be used as you know, that their data is going to be used in research, or have they given permission? Yeah, those all those are issues that have come up in writing research ethics guidelines as well, especially with so much data available on the internet now.
Yes, thank you. I see Prof. Gunter Schulze is opening his video. Are you about to ask or comment something?
No, thank you very much. It was a very good talk. I really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gunter Schulze. But we are approaching the time now. It's 3 minutes to 6. Thank you very much for the lively discussions. I don't dare to conclude anything, but maybe I would ask Prof. Schele and also Prof. Azirah for concluding remarks, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. As I said before, I hope that we can do both in the future, to embed and to ground our knowledge production in the peculiarities of the regions and the areas, and considering the social and political and economic and cultural contexts, and combine that with a cosmopolitan and global approach and bringing people together. And in our case, so far, we only managed to bring people from a German university and several Indonesian universities together. But it would have been my wish to extend that and to also include friends and colleagues from African countries or from Latin America. Right now, we try to establish something with Argentina, but again, the students are not that enthusiastic because they are so tired with Zoom meetings and digital spaces. So this is something that would also bring us to our end, because I'm sure after 2 hours of intense listening and discussion, you're also tired and hungry. And so this over-enthusiasm of digital media and Zoom meetings also brings us to a certain fatigue. And that also holds true for our students who are longing for old-fashioned meetings in physical presence again. So thank you very much from my side for your participation, for your interest. I hope that you will have the chance to read the book, and I even hope, I have even bigger hopes that you will continue to experiment with new models of collaboration, both intra and inter-regional, both within your own society, your own region, and in global comparative perspectives. And we need new scholars, young scholars, to continue that, and we need their creativity and their enthusiasm to do things that we, the older generations, were only trying or doing our very best to lay the basis for it. So I'm wishing you the very best, and I hope to see at least some of you in the near future in physical presence again.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, Judith. Prof. Azirah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just a few words. I think there's a lot of scope for collaboration and research across the region, across ASEAN. And I think there are also a lot of opportunities which are provided at the moment, not just across ASEAN first, and also across ASEAN and other regions. I see a lot of research areas that we can actually work on under the 3 pillars of ASEAN: social, cultural, political, security, and economics. There's also a lot happening in ASEAN higher education at the moment. If you're looking at what's happening in the region, I think we're creating a common higher education space. So with that, I hope there's going to be more collaboration between different ASEAN scholars, different centers, like ASEAN study centers and Southeast Asian centers can actually work more closely together. I think there's actually not enough collaboration going on. And then strengthening research in the region, and then working with scholars from other regions, and also looking at ASEAN and the EU, ASEAN and Latin America, comparing regions as well. So I think there are lots of opportunities that are being offered. You can see quite a lot of funding bodies which are encouraging this and this kind of cooperation, intra-ASEAN and inter-regional research and collaboration. And I think this is actually the way forward. And I hope that that the centers like your center could actually also collaborate with the Center for ASEAN Regionalism in University of Malaya, and I think reach out also to other centers in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in other parts of ASEAN, and then strengthening collaboration with the EU as well, with Europe. Thank you.